Hi everyone! This is our first of four videos for Unit 2, 1607 to 1754. We're going to be looking today a little bit at the characteristics of conquest and colonization on the part of different European nations, because they did vary quite a bit in their motives and characteristics and interactions with native peoples. Now, you will see here an overview of Unit 2. Once again, like I said last time, our very first topic is always going to be contextualizing period 2. Our last one in this case is comparison in period 2. And in this particular video, we are going to be focusing on our very first main topic, 2.2, European colonization. So let's go ahead and get started. So we have one main video, or really one main question here, how do European states differ in their motives for colonization, characteristics of conquest, and their interactions with native peoples? Now, there was a huge variety of motives across different European nations and also across different colonial settlements. And we'll talk a little bit in some of these varieties between British colonies, different regions of the British colonies. We'll talk about that in our next video for Unit 2. But this time we're going to be looking at some of the differences across different European states, colonial regions. So some people came for religious freedom. Many people came for economic prosperity and social mobility. And some people came to spread religion. And one thing that's important to note before we get started is that state motives, the motives of governments of European nations, sometimes varied or didn't actually align with the motives of the settlers themselves. States were often mostly interested in increased tax revenue and new sources of wealth. And this could only happen if people went and settled new lands and then produced taxable goods like mineral wealth, mining, or plantation wealth. And of course, this also increased the power and prestige of the European nation. And again, this did not always align with the motive of the settlers, which often was about personal economic prosperity and especially social mobility, because these colonial regions didn't have a noble or monarchical class for the most part. And the new sources of wealth really did allow quite a bit of mobility, and that is moving up the social ladder for people who were common born people, not nobles. So this was often at odds with the goal of the state governments, who really saw the colonial region as almost their personal cash cows and a way to increase their own power and their own prestige. And as I've already said, European states had different methods and characteristics of colonization. So let's go ahead and look at four of the main regions that we see in the Americas. Okay, so we're going to start with the Spanish. We've already talked a little bit about the Spanish in the first unit. You know, they were the first ones to colonize parts of the Americas, to conquer parts of the Americas. The colonial regions for Spain stretched at their height all the way from the southern tip of South America to what is today New Mexico, California, and Florida, so into what is today part of the United States. And their motives were particularly the extraction of wealth. The Spanish were very motivated by extracting wealth from these colonies. Mining in particular, there's a great deal of silver, especially in Latin America, and then also plantation agriculture, especially sugar, which was very, very, very valuable. So one other motive, of course, and we mentioned this in the last video, was the spread of Christianity because of the Catholic counter-reformation in response to the Protestant Reformation. The Catholic Church had groups, new orders of priests like the Franciscans and the Jesuits, whose main purpose was this kind of missionary impetus to go out and convert more people to the Catholic faith. And as I said in my last video, this is a really good guise to cover more avaricious motives like extracting wealth. So this is a really good way to say, hey, look, we're just doing this to benefit the peoples there. We're trying to convert them to Christianity and save them from, in the Christian belief, the fiery domain of hell. So the characteristics of conquest were very much shaped by this desire to extract wealth because it focused on the subjugation of the natives as a laboring inferior people. As I talked about in the last video, native peoples who did not die from disease were often forced into mission towns and into the encomienda system, in which they were forced to labor on plantation as slaves. Many of them were forced to labor in mines. In the Incan Empire, for example, the Europeans, the Spanish, adopted the Incan mita system, in which they required the native peoples to work on not state projects, but state mining to mine wealth for the Spanish. So the subjugation of natives was really, really a big part of this. And it also included forcing Spanish culture on them, particularly Christianity, but also their language and their style of dress to a certain extent as well. This really earned the Spanish a pretty bad reputation amongst other European states. It's sometimes called the Black Legend. Now, it's wrong to assume that after initial conquest that every single interaction with the Spanish and a native person was force and rape and subjugation, but they earned this reputation pretty fairly in their fairly brutal treatment of native people. So this was definitely a black mark and something that other countries are going to try to avoid to a certain extent. So their interactions with the natives, I've mentioned this already. There was a great deal of racial mixing, again, through both sexual exploitation and marriage. So there's quite a bit of mixing of peoples in Latin America, in Central and South America. And as I've already mentioned, the Spanish culture was very much forced on native peoples. So there's a reason why the Spanish language was incredibly ubiquitous across Latin America today. And as is the Catholic faith, which was also forced on native peoples by and large in the 16th and 17th and 18th centuries. A lot of this happened through, as I said, the forced migration of peoples into mission towns, into Spanish Catholic mission towns. Okay, so we're just going to talk about each of these pretty briefly. So we're going to move on to the French. The French settled areas mostly around what is today part of Canada, which is Quebec. Particularly, they settled around the St. Lawrence River and then down into the Ohio River Valley, all the way as far down as Louisiana. And of course, just like the Spanish and other settlers, they also had claims in the Caribbean. But for the purposes of our course, which focuses on U.S. history, these were their North American holdings. And you can see these red circles. This is where the really big populations, even though the French claimed all this land in the beige, their major population centers for their colonial regions are going to be in these sort of red circles. So they were motivated initially for a search for a Northwest Passage that would take them to Asia. They did not find it, but it did lead them down the St. Lawrence River. They also were motivated to a certain extent by the spread of Christianity. Like other Catholic countries, like the Spanish, they wanted to spread Catholicism and gain new converts, but they were very sensitive to the reputation of the Spanish, the Black Legend, and they wanted to show that it was possible to gain converts in a non-violent manner for the most part. Now, in terms of the characteristics of their conquest, what they actually ended up mostly doing is, especially in the St. Lawrence area, they mostly became fur trappers and traders. Some farmers as well, but a lot of the French came, a lot of mostly men came to be fur trappers and traders. And this really did shape their interactions with native peoples because they had a strong trade relationship. They ended up having much more mutually beneficial relationships with native peoples than either the English or the Spanish. There was also a great deal of intermarriage between the French and the natives, especially more than the English, at least. Because again, as I said, mostly it was men who migrated, especially in the early years. Many of them did take wives amongst native women. These children, just as the children in the Spanish colonial regions of these marriages were called mestizos, in the French Empire they were called métis. This was also featured a fairly peaceful conversion to Catholicism. Many indigenous peoples did convert, certainly not all of them, but this was peaceful conversion for the most part. This is not a forced subjugation of the native peoples into Catholicism. Okay, moving on to briefly the Dutch. Let's talk a little bit about the Dutch. We're not going to go too far into the Dutch because most of their actual empire was actually in the Indian Ocean. This trading post empire they ended up creating really in the 17th and 18th centuries. But we're going to talk a little bit about them. They did have some holdings in North America. Once again, they were looking, much like other countries, they were initially looking for a Northwest Passage to Asia. They tried looking up the Hudson River and they did not find it, but they did find trade. Okay, so just like the French, they did seek mostly trade rather than conquest. So the Dutch from Netherlands were often characterized and considered to be one of the more tolerable nations in Europe. They had a much more high toleration for different forms of Protestantism, different forms of religion, and even Judaism. And so this means that this tolerance to a certain extent comes with them, and they do make some attempts to deal more fairly with Native peoples, although this was not an evenly applied attempt. Like, for example, they did make the attempt to buy New York from the Native peoples, even though they ended up paying the wrong group of natives. We don't know for sure if this was intentional or unintentional, but this sort of transaction was very indicative of many Europeans. These misunderstandings, or maybe purposeful misunderstandings, did definitely mark a lot of the transactions between Europeans and natives. So the Dutch Empire in North America was mainly limited to modern day New York and New Jersey. They had a fairly strong Dutch presence for a little while in the 17th century, although they are going to lose these areas to the English by the end of the 18th century, or excuse me, by the end of the 17th century. Their interactions with the natives, like the French, were fairly peaceful, mostly beneficial. They did have some more conflict than the French because there were more farmers. As I forgot to mention, many of them were fur traders, but they also set up lumber camps and a great deal of farming settlements. So, as I said, a lot of beneficial trade relationships with native peoples, although there was some tension and conflict, certainly because they were more likely to have farming settlements than the French, and they also had very limited intermarriage with native peoples, unlike the French. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the English. And like I said, we'll talk a lot more about the British colonies in the next couple of topics, but let's talk briefly about the English. So, as you probably know, the English North American colonies are mostly along the East Coast, from modern day Maine, which at the time was part of Massachusetts, all the way down to Georgia. Georgia was sort of a buffer colony between the British colonies and what was Spanish dominated Florida, Spanish controlled Florida. So motives for conquest on the part of the English, some people came for religious freedom. Some settlements were religious settlements initially, like the Puritans or the Pilgrims in the New England colonies. We'll talk more about that in the next video. But mostly people were coming, even the ones who came over that were Protestants, were mostly coming for social mobility and more economic prosperity, for the chance to own land, to build their own farms, to create their own businesses, but especially their own farms. So the characteristics of English settlers, as opposed to the French or the Spanish or the Dutch, they were the ones who were much more likely to migrate with families or wives. Now, there were still a lot less women than men, but because many of them did become farmers and were looking for their farms, to own farms, many of them did bring families or wives with them. So a lot of these farmers had families with them, which meant that a lot of times this is going to change their interaction with Native peoples. And I'll talk about that in just a second. Because they were farmers looking for land, there was a kind of constant tension as they often encroached on native lands. And so that kind of leads us into the interactions with native peoples. There was a very contentious relationship with many of the settlers in the British colonies with the natives. There was a lot of fighting over land. We saw a number of wars break out between native peoples and Europeans or British colonial settlers because they were taking land. Unlike the French, who had these fur trade relationships with the native peoples, farming takes up a lot of land, and that meant encroachment, continual encroachment with native peoples. There was virtually no intermarriage. There could be a couple of reasons for this. Part of it was because there were more women in the British colonies. Part of it was also probably because most of the settlers were Protestant and there was less interest in spreading culture or religion. They weren't trying to convert the natives. They just sort of wanted to push them out of the way. And that's essentially what we see happening in the British colonies, is this constant push to the west, to push away the lands that native peoples lived on, push away the natives that lived on these lands. Okay, so that's going to take us to the end of this video. I'll see you next time for our video that talks a little bit more depth about the British colonies.